So, with what you have, all you need is exactly what you have, for you have the mind of God. It's not a different mind, the same mind. And you simply rearrange the mind by a mere assumption. What would the feeling be like were it true that I am now the man that I want to be, now the woman that I want to be? But it's added, but persevere. You must persevere in it. If I call you now and you answer, one thing. Well, will you respond an hour later to the same call? Then if you persevere, you will. If now, an hour later, you think of yourself as you now, when you dare to assume that you are now the man that you want to be, an hour later, are you still assuming that state? If you're not persevering. You are the hearer who looked into the mirror with his natural face, and he saw it. Then he went his way and at once forgot what he looked like. So if 1 hour from now you're not still assuming that you are the man that you want to be, you've forgotten. You are the hearer and not the doer. And he warns us of the vast difference between being a hearer and being a doer. The doer acts. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So bear in mind that your wonderful world is not bounded by your senses. You perceive far, far more than your sense, no matter how acute it is, could discover. Your senses can't discover what now you're capable of assuming that you are. Your senses dictate what reason will allow. And your reason and your senses are bound together. Go beyond it. For what you now know from experience, what you know from the past will not be what you will know when you know more than you now know. But having done it and proven it, I know more than I did when I was bounded by my senses. When I couldn't get out of a certain island on time to meet a commitment in Milwaukee, I knew what I did in the army. I simply applied the identical thing, and I got out. When there was a long, long waiting list, thousands waiting for all the islands, and only 2 little ships, not big ships, 2 small little ships, one carrying up more than 60-odd passengers, and one carrying 120, and thousands waiting, and they only came once a month into the island. One every 32 days, and one every 3.5 weeks. How long would it take to get them all out? I didn't ask anyone a favor. Didn't ask my brother, who was a powerful businessman in the island. He criticized me for not arranging passage back to America when I left America. But that's the place where you should have done it. That's the powerhouse of the world, New York City. That's where all these things are done. And you dare to leave New York City when you could arrange a round trip, and you come here on a one-way ticket? Well, I didn't ask any favors of him or any favors of any member of the family. I simply did exactly what I did in the army. And in 24 hours, I was called by the Alcoa company and given my passage over thousands who were waiting. Isn't my concern why she did it, or why someone else didn't get it in preference to mine? But my name was down at the very bottom. I wasn't at the top. I'm at the bottom of the list. It isn't my concern. I look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and I persevered. I sat in a chair in my hotel room, and there I sat in the chair and assumed I am next to the boat. I'm climbing up the gangplank. Just before we had a deep water harbor, so you had to go off to sea about maybe a half mile or a mile to sea on a little tender, and then take the gangplank and go up to the ship. So I felt myself bobbing as you would on the ocean, and then moving up the gangplank. I could smell the rawness of the sea. Got up to the top. My mind wandered. I brought it back down again and did it all over again. It wandered, brought it back down again, kept on doing it over and over until finally I did it. I fell sound asleep sitting in the chair in the act of doing. Next day, Alcoa calls me and gives me my passage for my wife and my little girl. So I'm telling you from experience, it doesn't fail, but we must not simply be hearers of the word, We must be doers of the word. For if you are a hearer and not a doer, you deceive yourself, he tells us. For we are the operant power. This law doesn't operate itself. It doesn't care if you're good, bad, or indifferent. Look around the world. Who would think that tonight someone serving life sentence in our jail is the same mind that sits in the White House? Who would think the one who sits now in the Vatican, that mind of the Pope is the same mind of the one who is groveling on his belly, trying to kiss his hand? So on Sunday, there'll be Palm Sunday, and they'll do all these things on Palm Sunday, the Holy Palms. And then comes Friday, then comes Sunday. And all this will go on and have all the show, fabulous show. And he who is being born on the backs of strong, strapping men does not differ from those who are his slaves bearing him. The same mind, but they have rearranged their mind to be slaves. And he has arranged his mind to be the Father, to be Papa, the great Pope. Same mind. There is only one mind in the world. There aren't two minds. That's why I can tell you, I know that when he stands before you, he will know you as his Father. And you will know him as your Son. And because I know him as my Son, are we not one mind? Are we not one being? When the same being who called me Father will one day call you Father, are we not the same Father? The same mind, the same spirit, the same body, without loss of identity. So I'm telling you tonight, try it. Try it every moment of time. You know tonight what you want to be. I don't care what you want to be. It's simply a rearrangement of the mind. And you rearrange the mind not through any study and any effort. It's simply a mere assumption. What do I want to be? Get it clear in my mind's eye. Well, then assume that I am it. Listen to the words in the book of Joel. Let the weak man say, I am strong. Let the weak man say, I am strong. That's in the book of Joel. Jehovah God. That's what the word would mean, Joel. You're called upon when you are dumb to assume that you're exactly what you want to be. Not dumb because you don't want to be that. You want to be as free as the wind. Well, assume that you are. May I tell you in a way that no one knows you'll become it. But you must persevere. And the word perseverance is true. If I don't believe it, well then 1 second later, I've turned back to my former state and become once more Lot's wife, the pillar of salt. Salt is a preservative. In the old days, the only way to preserve something is to salt it. Not so long ago, when I was a little boy, we caught fish, an enormous quantity of fish, because we didn't have these enormous feet catching our fish. So we had fish to burn, literally burn. If they didn't get in before, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what did they have? They could either put it onto the dung heap and make dung out of it, or clean it up and salt it. So they cleaned it up and salted it. It would keep indefinitely, for we had no refrigeration. So you salted the fish. Now we could have salt flying fish, if you wanted it that way. But fish that were not consumed by sundown was discarded. Use it for bait the next day, or use it in the dung heap. Fertilize the fields with it. So salt is a preservative. So when Lot's wife was turned to salt, she turned back and went back to her former state. And that is all that it means. You look back and became a pillar of salt. You turned back to the state you said you would leave behind you. And looking back, you were salted. You were preserved in it. So turn away from what you really want to be. Turn back, you're going to be salted in it. So I ask you to leave what you are unless you like what you are. There's portions of what you are today that you like. All right, wonderful. There are other portions that you do not like. Well, you don't have to give up everything in your living room when you rearrange the structure of it. Certain pieces that you'll keep. You may change this location, but you'll keep it. The same thing is true with the structure of the mind. You keep certain things and you let other things go. Take friends in your world who are not doing well, rearrange them in your mind's eye, and they're doing well. So put that part of the structure in your mind's eye. Rearrange the entire structure and dare to assume that it's true and walk in that assumption. And that assumption, though at the moment is denied by reason and denied by your senses, if you persevere in it, it will harden into fact. This is the law of Scripture, that I came not to abolish, but to fulfill the Jewish law and the Jewish prophets. For there was no other Scripture in the first century but the Jewish Scriptures. So the word Jew is not placed before it to qualify it, but the only Scripture that he knew. He came to fulfill the Jewish law. He reinterpreted the law psychologically and showed them exactly how it's done. So go out and do not abolish anything, simply fulfill it. Fulfill the law and fulfill the prophets. The prophets, when they're fulfilled, that's done by sheer grace. That comes. That comes by promise. And no one's going to stop it, may I tell you. But you could go on living in a state that you do not wish in this world. But in spite of that, you will still receive the promise, because it isn't given to the one who is rich and deny the one who is poor. But why remain poor and bat your head out morning, noon, and night against the inevitable blows in this world? I hope you do not wish money for the sake of money, but if you need money, well then apply this law. What would the feeling be like if it were true that I was now free of this pressure, free of it? Dare to assume that you are, and then persist in that assumption, and that assumption will harden into reality.
Hey everybody, so before I get into any kind of rant or ramble, as I do at the beginning, let's give a shout out to Complicated, who does music on this channel, and will be streaming on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with his trio. Only trio on Twitch as far as I know. You can also click the link, listen to some of the prior streams right now. While you're listening to this. So, in that little excerpt we just heard, which on YouTube is listed as Rearrange the Mind, but I'm not sure if that's the actual name of it, because sometimes I just pull them up and I'm like, this is a good one, play it, and then I don't double check my lecture list to see if that's even the right name. But if you search it on YouTube, Neville Goddard Rearrange the Mind, that's the lecture if you want to hear the whole thing. That was at the end of it. And in that, Neville mentions one of innumerable times where he gives the explanation of something that is often discussed and almost never understood amongst people who are trying to teach their version of the law and help other people understand the law, which is the mystery of Elohim, which is the... In most spaces, it's people summarize it as everyone is you pushed out, or EIYPO. So for anyone finding this on YouTube, this little rant I want to specifically address to anyone who's new to Neville or has found the law of assumption through some other way, but you don't know anything about Neville, or you know a little bit about Neville and you've read some lectures, but you don't really understand what he's talking about there, because you haven't read all the books like I've done and listened to a ton of the lectures and read a ton of the lectures like I've done. And if you want to get into that, come back here, because I'll just be reading them until I get through all of them, and then I'll find other things to read too. But so all the time in many lectures I've done so far, Neville gives a description of what is going on there. And essentially, the being that you really are is God, and so is everyone you have ever known and will ever know. That's only its form, its appearance, its symbol to you now while you're here. But in time, everyone that's fractured into these individual identities will remember undoubtedly that they are God, and then reascend back into unity as a new and reinvigorated whole, where we'll be able to create on a whole new level. So this reality now is dead, and we're just animating things that we already did. So creation is finished, is the way Neville puts it. The acts are complete. In other words, everything here was already created, and everything you will ever experience has already been created. But God died and fractured itself to become this multitude. However, we are still the same being. In that lecture that we just heard, Neville said there are not two minds, there's one mind. There's a common thing I see in some manifesting spaces where people talk about influencing the subconscious of another, and Neville does go into sort of the nuance of that, and he might even use that language, but at the end of the day, the language he returns to most commonly is saying that there are not two gods, there is one God. So the other person doesn't have their own individual subconscious, it is one subconscious. It is one unified whole. And the coolest little metaphor I came up with last night for this was actually because I was thinking about Campbell Camplicated, who does the music for the channel. So in the track you hear on here, that's all him. That's all what he did in a digital audio workstation. He played a keyboard, but it sounds like a piano. It's actually the piano at Abbey Road. He has a sample of it. And then there's like a water sound, which someone else recorded, but we put it in there and kind of he shifted it around for me to make it sound a little better. And all the beats were his idea, completely his manifestation. That song is not a bunch of people playing. It's all his creation. And similarly, if he were to do a song of like a full orchestra where you have 50 different instruments being present in the piece, you would hear it and you would think, wow, this is a bunch of people in a room playing it. But in actuality, it's just Campbell in his living room at his laptop making the song. Well, that's how this reality is. You think you're the oboe and the person you want to marry is the violin, and your parents are over in the drum section, and one of your friends plays the flute and another plays an upright bass or whatever. But in actuality, you're the entire room and all the sounds in the room and the composer and the people in the audience listening. It's all you. It's all one entity. So hopefully that metaphor helps explain things, because I think when people are hearing about this concept through people who didn't really read a lot of Neville or kind of explore that mystery in their own mind and in their own dreams to any deep degree, they think of it as like, oh, well, I can sort of, everybody can be my automaton, and I can sort of control them like a robot or a puppet, and that's not what's going on. It's far more complicated than that. It's more like when you step into a state, you then experience that state complete, and part of that complete state is the way other people are going to treat you and talk to you in that state as well. That's already done. You're essentially choosing to experience a different version of someone out of infinite versions because you're choosing to experience a different version of yourself out of an infinite version, out of infinite selves. However, even though there is this appearance of individuality, and that's part of what we're here to create even more individualized identities. Our true identity is I am. Our true identity is God the Father. We just forgot that. So you just forgot that this other person is you, that you are animating them just as you are animating yourself. I hope that makes it a little bit more clear. However, I do realize, and I've talked about this before, at the end of the day, the human mind has even though imagination is limitless, I think there are some limits imposed on our understanding while we are, a human animating the exterior world. And one of those sort of limits is the ability to really understand the extent and the mystery of Elohim, just like understanding the mystery of death is something that for the most part is beyond the comprehension of the human mind. So really at the end of the day, you should pick an understanding of it that works for you, and ultimately know that if you're in a position right now where you feel disrespected or looked over, or even something as drastic as abused, that you can choose to experience a different version of other people in your world, if you truly identify with and persist in that new state. You don't have to perpetually be a victim or perpetually be stuck in any form of mistreatment from anybody. And you can assume that literally everybody, that you're just whoever you encounter, you're always treated respectfully, and you're always your wishes are always being honored anyway. So the idea is to pick an identity in which you always receive the treatment you prefer from other people, and you will. And you're just picking a new version of you to experience, and with that comes these other yous, these other versions of you, and how they treat you. I hope that is clear and makes sense. So I had another rant, but we'll save that for another time, and that is about how other people explain non-duality in a way that's quite different from the way Neville does, because I've been looking at some other non-dual teachers, and I don't know, at the end of the day, I still prefer Neville. Now, I'm biased because I've had certain experiences, but I think it is important for us to always explore as much as we can of any alternative viewpoint. But yeah, so anyway, today is going to be a pretty practical lecture, Feed My Sheep. Ultimately, the point of it is just to encourage you, as Neville did in the little bit we just heard, if you've been lazy-minded, if you've been neglecting certain things that you want to experience, now is the time to imagine. Your power is always right here, right now, waiting for you. These infinite states are here, waiting for you to animate them and step into them. And so this is simply a reminder to stop screwing around and get into it. So with that, we'll get right into it. Let me just first think if there was any little thing I wanted to say first. I don't think so. I do want to show off. I found this just before the stream because I was like, well, I want to have some little sheep, so we got some little wavy sheep today to complement the topic of the stream. Okay, so Feed My Sheep from 1956. This morning's subject is Feed My Sheep. Let me make sure everything's set up okay. Yeah, it looks fine. This morning's subject is Feed My Sheep. This is simply saying, practice the truths you have heard, for it means to shepherd the thoughts of the mind. For most of us, our thoughts are like rambling sheep that have no shepherd. We are called upon now to rule the thoughts, to rule the mind. This is also, I don't know, we've come across quite a few metaphors that Neville has used for thoughts. Firstly, in the coin of heaven, so coins. In fishing, fish. Also, birds comes up quite a lot as a metaphor for thoughts. And now we have sheep as a symbol of thoughts. As you know, the kingdom of heaven is as a man starting into a far country, and he calls unto himself his servants and gives them his property, his goods. To one he gives 5 talents, to another he gives 2, and to another he gives 1, every man according to his several ability. And when he returned, he asked for a reckoning. The one who had 5 traded and produced another 5. He was highly commended and told he was faithful over a few things, he would now be a ruler over many. The one who had 2, he too traded and produced 4, and he too was highly commended and told to enter into the joy of the Lord. But the one who had 1 was afraid, because his master, so he thought, was a hard man, and so he buried his talent in the earth and did not expand it. But I think you know the story. He was condemned for his misuse of the talent. It was taken from him and given to the one who had the most, the one who had 10. Well, now you have received talents in the last few days or weeks, each one according to his ability. Some of us came with more prejudice to overcome, with more superstition, some with other beliefs that did not quite coincide with what we heard from the platform, and many of us had to overcome certain things before we could accept others. So some got 1 talent, some 2, some 5, some maybe more. Now a talent that is not exercised, like a muscle that is not exercised, finally sleeps, and as far as we are concerned, it atrophies. It doesn't really die, but it goes so sound asleep, it might just as well not be part of ours. We must practice what we have heard, for without practice, the most profound understanding in the world would not produce the desired results. So a little talent, call it a talent now if you really expand it, if you exercise it, will be far more profitable than many talents that you do not exercise. This morning we will take 1 or 2 of the talents that we offer you. I can't force them upon you. We offer you. Here's a statement from the book of, I don't know if it's Amos or Amos. I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in a sieve. Yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. fall upon the earth. I will sift him and scatter him all over the nations of the world. But not the least grain shall fall upon the earth. Do you know who Israel is? Who this Jacob is? The Israel means is real. You can't find it on the earth. Don't look for it on the earth. Yet you must find him. For formed him in the womb to be my servant and to bring Jacob, which is Israel, again unto me. And I think by now, if you've been listening to these, you should know Jacob and Esau. So you and I were formed from the womb to be the servant, and to bring Jacob unto the Lord. He is scattered all over the world, but you will not find him. No, not the smallest grain upon the earth. But you will find him within yourself. For the cue is given in Jacob. Jacob is a smooth-skinned lad. He is not like his brother Esau, who has hair, which means something external. So the Israel you're looking for this day is the thing you want to realize in the world. Do not look out and hope to find it, or even to be encouraged that you will find it, by judging after the appearances of things. Do you seek health for a friend? That's Israel scattered, but not on the earth. In all the nations of the world I have scattered the house of Israel, but do not look into the eyes of a doctor for hope. Do not look into the eyes of the patient for hope of his recovery, because you will not find him on earth. Not the least grain has fallen upon the earth. I think this whole this whole paragraph is really great because sometimes once you've assumed the state, there can be, and we've done interval of time, look it up, there can be an interval of time between your imaginal act and the manifestation in the exterior world. And during that time, a lot of people, as Neville just discussed in the lecture we heard at the beginning, they give up. They go back to the former state. They become a pillar of salt. They return to that which they wanted to escape. And why? Because they said they saw no evidence. Well, you've got to be persistent. You've got to keep the faith. You've got to know that what you've assumed will come to pass. It doesn't matter if you don't see any evidence right now. It's going to come to pass. Keep your mind in the state of consciousness of already having attained it. You're not going to find the evidence in the exterior world until it manifests. Sometimes there is an unfolding. And when there is an unfolding, too, people also often look back and turn to the pillar of salt because the unfolding can be really dramatic. So in that case, they turn back to a former state and remain in that state and wonder why the manifestation hasn't come or won't come or whatever. And well, it's because your dominant state got lost somewhere along in the unfolding. You didn't have the faith that this was only happening. These events were only taking place because of your imaginal act. You know, when an unfolding starts, you need to always remind yourself, this is only happening because of what I've imagined. And in that moment, go back to your imaginal act if you need to, or simply remind yourself that, oh, this means my end is guaranteed. Because if you don't do that, this is just my assumption and my experience. If in that point in time you so strongly identify with some other state, any state other than achieving what you desire, you can stay there indefinitely until you switch back, until you go back to the state of the wish fulfilled. So if you're not seeing evidence, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. You find the evidence within. You find the state within. So do you know what you want in this world? If you know exactly what you want, where do you see it? You see it in the mind of yourself. So when you know what you want, here is a part of Israel scattered. And you didn't see him on earth. You saw him in the kingdom within you. For the kingdom of God is within. So you saw a piece of Israel, now go bring him. I formed you from the womb to be my servant, and to bring Jacob again unto me. You take that thing you have seen in the mind's eye, which to make it practical we will think of as a friend in need. It may be physical need, maybe he is unwell, or it could be he needs a job. Well, now you be the one who will decide what part of Israel you will bring to the Lord, and prove to the Lord you are a perfect servant. For the promise is that when you prove you are the perfect servant, then you will no longer be called servant. He will call you his friend. I no longer call you servant, for now I call you friend, for you do whatsoever I command you. And therefore, if you do what I command you, you are no longer my servant, you are my friend. And now we will commune as a man to a friend face to face. Another you has had this association for a while, for that is the perfect purpose of it, to move from the servant to the friend. And after we become the friend of God for a while, then we turn to that of the Son. We no longer are the friend, we become his son, but we cannot recognize the sonship of God until we first prove ourselves as a servant. So the servant is to bring Israel, meaning imagine lovingly and believe in your imaginal activity. Now we come back to the friend in need. Represent him to yourself as though he now embodied the state you want him to realize in this world. If it is a job, see him gainfully employed. Take your imaginary hand, which is Jacob's hand, and put it into his imaginary hand. Leave it in that imagined state until it takes on the tones of reality. When it seems to you real, that you are actually touching him, clothe it with all the reality of the external world. So Jacob clothed himself in the skins of Esau, to deceive his father into believing that he, Jacob, was Esau. So you take the Jacob within you, which is the smooth-skinned lad, which is simply now the wish. You want to congratulate him. You want to hear his voice. You want to hear him, this is your friend who's in need. You want to hear him tell you that he has never been so happy in a job in his life. He has never been so gainfully employed, that he loves going to work. He just loves everything about his job. You actually hear him as though you heard him. Now you clothe it with all the tones of reality. If you have 2 talents, give it 2. If you have 5, give it 5. Begin to make it more and more real. In the talents here, we've talked about this before. This is in terms of the various senses you can employ in the imaginal act. It could also mean, do you like to do things like scripting, which is like writing out a little story? Are you really good with really strong affirmations? Like what is your primary imaginal activity? Do you have a couple different ways you like to do it? Integrate as many of those as possible into this imaginal activity on your friend's behalf. Begin to make it more and more real. The day will come, maybe this day, you will so clothe your Israel with the skins of Esau that you can actually bring it as an objective fact to your father and prove you are a servant, for he formed you from the womb to actually be his servant. And what is the servant to do? To bring Jacob unto me again. So here Jacob is scattered, lost in all the minds of men. You won't find him on the earth. You only find him if you know where to look. Now to prove you know where to look, to prove you are a good servant, go bring me Jacob. So when you bring Jacob clothed in your own mind's eye, as though you heard what you want to hear, as though you touched and you witnessed what you would like to touch and see in this world. And when you remain faithful to your vision will make for itself that perfect body in which to abide. Then you will see an objective corresponding fact, but it is not there. It is all within your own mind. It is there where he scattered it. It is there where he sustains it. He will simply project it for you onto the screen of space, that you may have tangible evidence that you do know how to find and bring Jacob. If I know how to go searching for my Israel, if I know how to go looking for him and how to clothe him and give him an appearance of reality, and I don't do it, then I am not the good servant who took the 5 talents and expanded them. I am the one who buried it. Now some of us are almost afraid to test it because we are comforted. If we can believe this without quite putting it to the test, for if we put it to the test and we fail, then we have no faith. We cannot go back to the former comfort that we enjoyed, say, in a more orthodox meeting. We thought we would find it here, and if I don't test it and prove it to my own satisfaction, then I have neither the old comfort of the orthodox concept nor the comfort that I enjoyed here, for I disproved it. So I invite you to attempt, if you will, to disprove it. You can't disprove it, but if you go out knowing where to look for your Israel, knowing why you are fashioned from the womb to be a servant, that is the first stage. Until you test yourself, until you prove you can do it, you are not a servant of the Lord. But as you become a servant of the Lord, he will make you his friend. Then the relationship will be on a higher level. You will commune with your father as a man does with a friend, face to face. You will not see him as an object in space, but you will actually know how to bring about a wished-for state of mind. Bring it about at will. As you can bring about a wished-for state of mind, you have made of the deep, which is your father, a friend, and you will actually know that companionship between the deep of self and you, the being that is really a wonderful imagination. Then the day will come, having been a wonderful friend of God, the seal will be broken, and you will be revealed as the being you really are, which is the Son of God and the Father. Every person in the world is the child of God, believing itself to be a man born of man. I have tried in the past 2 weeks to convince you that your origin is God. It is not what the world would tell you, a little bug. For if you were a little bug, a little spermatozoa, though you seem to embody yourself and expand in the form of a man, your end will be a little spermatozoa, for all ends run true to origins. So whatever the origin, you can determine the end. I tell you, your origin is God. Therefore, your end is God. But to arrive at that end, you pass through the stages of the servant, then the friend, then God, which is the Son of God. For I and my Father are one, yet my Father is greater than I. Yes, I do not claim that this union, this oneness, entitles me to the same identical feeling of being Father. I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. For the thing symbolized that bears witness of this unseen state is not really as great as that which it symbolizes. So in this case, though, the symbol is your identity itself, like your individual identity. and your identity is just everything in your life, including you, your name, your history. They're all symbols of God the Father, but they're not the thing itself. They're symbols of the thing itself. So we are one, and I will know it, and I will see my Father and see that he and I look alike. Yet we are father and son relationship. But before I can get near it, I must prove I'm a good servant. Now you take it this morning. We invite you to try it for a friend. We ask you to try it for yourself. We have given you many angles how to test it, how to think of what you want first and see it in your mind's eye, Israel. For when I know clearly in my mind's eye what I want, I am actually looking at Israel, something that is real. It is real, but I must clothe it now in what the world calls reality by giving it external tones. But the thing was real long before it became a visible fact in the world. I see it in my mind's eye by making it as vivid and as lifelike a representation as possible as what I would actually see and what I would do and what I would actually hear were I physically present in such a situation now. When I see it clearly, I am looking into the eyes of Israel, and I found him scattered in the world, but not on the earth. For it is not on earth that I see him in my mind. Now I am looking at it and thinking of it, but the secret is to think from it, to occupy that state and get into it. When I get into it, I will clothe it in reality. I can think of a place and then close my eyes and assume that I am in that place. When I assume I'm in the place, I am clothing it with what the world calls reality. It was real before I clothed it. When I saw it clearly, this was Israel. But he wants me to bring him, and the only way I can test that I bring him and prove that I am the servant is to occupy the state. So I occupy the feeling of my wish fulfilled. When I get into the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain faithful to that state, then I am walking in my vision, and as we are told, if one would only advance confidently in the direction of his dream and endeavor to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected. Let me remain faithful to my vision by occupying my vision. Don't just see it. He demands that I bring Jacob unto the Lord. So Jacob is not a man who walked the face of the earth thousands of years ago, and Israel is not a nation now gathered together on the shores of Africa. He scatters the house of Israel in all the nations of the world. You might have been taught to believe that the person who calls himself a Jew in the presence of a nation is scattered Israel. Don't believe it. Everyone in the world is that which actually contains and holds Israel. As you think of something and desire it to be a reality in your world, you are seeing Israel. Now he wants you to bring him and wants you to prove that you can bring him and become the perfect servant of the Lord. Don't be afraid to be the servant. Become the perfect servant of God, and then become his friend, and then realize you are his son. Let us go out determined that we will take the requests brought in here this morning. There were 100 odd that came in, but there are many more. Maybe you do not know them. You can take them collectively, but you can take an individual friend, a member of your family, and decide this day you're going to bring about some blessing in the individual's life. You have it. You have the power to bless. For the power to confer reality on your wish for a friend is the power to bless that friend. If your friend is not well and you want the friend to be well, you simply assume that you and he or she are carrying on a conversation from a premise which you establish now. And that premise is that he or she never felt better in their lives. And you hear it and you witness it. Take your hand, your imaginary hand, and embrace them. Tell them what you feel about them, actually feel it. And then you do nothing outwardly to make it so. For things that you're going to see next, things that you're going to see are not made of things that do appear. So you do not prescribe anything for them. You do not change their physical diet. You don't offer any recommendation as to what they should do. You simply assume that they are already the embodiment of the state. You simply assume that they are already the embodiment of the state you desire for them, so you don't start prescribing. Leave that out completely. You simply walk faithful to your image of the friend. and you transform that image in your own mind's eye. You do it and see if you can bring him, because if you can't do that and prove it to yourself, you have not yet proven you are a servant. Therefore, the friendship is far removed from you. Everyone must prove that he is first a servant. As we read in Isaiah 49, I formed you from the womb to be my servant and to bring Jacob again unto me. Then I am told, even though Israel is not altogether gathered, I am blessed. The individual who does it, he doesn't have to bring the whole body of Israel. If he brings Jacob, one individual transformed, and proves he can transform him, he is blessed and receives a certain glory long before the body of Israel is collected and brought back. So here you wonder why he is called the King of Israel. Why is he called the king? People thought it meant a man who looked out upon a small little nation and thought he was king. Or they thought he was king, or even in irony when they said it. He isn't that. The individual who becomes son is truly king of the whole vast world of Israel, or of the ideas floating in the mind of man. For he is their shepherd. He is their king. He can command any idea to clothe itself in form. That is the King of Israel. That is the one that can make real a state that is only a wish. Israel is the true Israel. Here, long before we become that, lifted up, we must start to discipline the mind to become the perfect servant. There is no better time to start than now. If you are afraid to try it, then I wouldn't know what to tell you, because in this place you must test it. They do not have a religion where you just come here and sit on Sundays and gather together and form a nice little friendship this way. This is not that kind of religion at all. This is all to awaken the mind of man and make him a shepherd, make him something that rules. In fact, the very word translated feed in John 21 is translated many times in the Bible as shepherd, as rule. In Matthew 2, one shall come from Bethlehem, he shall have dominion over Israel. Well, in that one, he shall rule Israel, the word translated rule is the same word translated in John as feed. So don't take it literally. It simply means to take this mind of yours and discipline the whole mind by gathering things together and walking faithful to an invisible state. For Jacob is invisible. You thought he was a man who was a smooth-skinned lad. That is the way the mystic has of telling you this is a subjective state, and you must learn to clothe it with objectivity. You walk faithful to that subjective state, and then in time, it takes on the tones and the appearance of something external. See, the appearance of something external. The moment you detach your mind from that state, though at the moment of detachment it had some corresponding external witness, it will begin to fade. If you detach your mind from success, in the midst of success, success as a reality outside of you fades and vanishes from your world. So this is what I was talking about, where people can indefinitely delay their ultimate end, their ultimate manifestation, by so totally separating themselves from that state. And then whatever you put your mind on, it takes the place of. Proving success was not on the outside at all. It was within you. You clothed it for a moment and gave it the appearance of reality. But the day you are not faithful to the consciousness of being successful, the seeming solid reality of success vanishes from your world, proving itself to be the shadow it always was. And the reality, the light of success, was the idea in you with which you were identified. So if I assume that I am blank, and I name it, and I remain faithful to it, it comes out and makes itself seemingly real. If I cease to assume it and sustain it, it slowly vanishes from my world. And if it vanishes, I might think the reality was there. I have forgotten how to bring Jacob. I have forgotten how to bring him to the Lord. So here let us remember where Israel is. It's not in the Near East. Israel is scattered in all the nations of the world. In your mind, that is where he is. And now you have a purpose in this world. And if you really love the teaching, as the words are, lovest thou me, you say you are faithful. Peter, do you love me? He doesn't call him Peter, by the way, he calls him Simon. He never calls him Peter in any parts of the Bible. He is referred to as Peter, but whenever he is addressed by the central figure of the Gospels, he always calls him Simon, and Simon means to hear. It means to listen. Well, have you heard? Have you really heard, Simon? Have you heard? Have you really heard, Simon? Yes. Then do you love what you have heard? Lovest thou me, or what I have told you that I am? I am the thing that I teach, so do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Become ruler of this mind of yours, and prove you really love the thing you tell me you have heard. If you have heard it, then you are Simon. And if you have really heard it to the point of acceptance, prove you have accepted it by taking the talent received and expand it. Don't let the shepherd come, and when he asks you for the talent, you say you were afraid and you buried it. Let us not be afraid to actually test the truth of the principles we try to explain here. So all these are our truths that we have accepted. Now some got 1, some 2, some got 5. We have done our best in the past 2 weeks to give you all that we could within 2 weeks, unfolded from the Bible. We showed you the Bible is a mystery, that all your members are buried, not in one little book, but in all the books. They are telling you the story about yourself, how God became you that you may become God, how God died to become man in the sense of forgetting that he was God, and he awoke as man. Man walking the earth has no knowledge that he is God, and the individual who dares to claim that he is, and tells you that you are, is usually condemned by those who appoint themselves as teachers. That is the blind leading the blind, and they will call you arrogant if you dare to even demonstrate the power of the mind. And they will tell you that's not right. You are taking back from God the thing that belonged to God. You see, they are sound asleep. They don't realize that God became man for one purpose, that he may have the companionship of sons as gods. So man must awaken and realize who he really is. And he realizes that by starting first as a servant. I have given you, I think, a perfect technique to prove that you are a servant. Try it today. If you succeed, the simplest little way of taking an invisible state and making it become a reality, like the job for a friend, or even the getting of a hat, or even finding of the proper apartment, or even the getting of some little thing, you try it. If you lost something, nothing is lost in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord. For if it isn't lost, it is scattered now in Israel. Prove that it isn't lost. What is it that you have lost? Well, take it in your own mind's eye and then mentally touch it and mentally appropriate it and feel that you have it, that it is yours now, and remain faithful to that assumption and see if the thing returns. If the thing is recovered, you have proved that you have found Israel, a portion of him anyway, and you know how to take him and clothe him in such tones of reality that you can bring him to the Lord. For the Lord is your own wonderful consciousness. When you say, I am, that is the Lord. Go tell them, I am hath sent you. So when you walk in the feeling, I am so-and-so, it is not seen as yet, but that is something you are bringing to the Lord. And the more you feel it to be real, the more natural it becomes. Then it clothes itself in external facts. But the external fact is not the truth of it. Truth and fact oppose each other. Truth does not depend upon fact. This is this section here. We haven't read Truth Depends Upon the Intensity of Your Imagination, but this concept, Neville has a ton of fucking bold concepts, but this specific, succinct statement of it, and we've done before, I think, The Flood is Still Upon Us, maybe as the third or fourth lecture. This radical thought that, well, A, there's no external world, but that you're creating that. You're creating the so-called facts of the world, all of them. They're all your emanation. They're all born out of imagination. There is nothing which is true except that which you imagine to be true. This is one of the boldest things Neville says a lot of bold things, but in a way, this is just as bold as telling people they're God, because it's telling them essentially that there's no objective external world that exists outside of you. It doesn't have its own life independent of you. There are no facts that exist without you animating them and projecting them. It's a truly radical thing, and we have whole industries that are based around all of contemporary society is based around the idea that there is an external world we could get to know. But indeed, we're not getting to know any external world. We're simply manifesting the illusion of deeper knowledge of the external world, but it's all a projection. It's really wild. It's really wild. Truth does not depend upon fact. Truth depends upon the intensity of your imagination. Therefore, if I actually am intense about it, that is true. I might tomorrow find a corresponding fact to bear witness, but as I said earlier, let me not continue in that assumption and the fact will fade, proving it was not reality at all. Reality was in my assumption, and so truth depends not upon fact, but upon the intensity of imagination. Then you will understand the drama when truth faces what is called fact or reason, and when asked what is the truth, truth remains silent. He would not answer because fact or reason thinks that a true judgment must conform to the external reality to which it relates. If I say, aren't these lovely, and I mention something that no one present can see, you say my judgment isn't true, for if it isn't something on the outside, then what I say has no reality. I must be suffering from some illusion. If I persist in it and you cannot see it, then it is hallucination. But I know from my experience I can take an illusion, and through the medium of an illusion, I can relate myself to reality, or is real, by walking faithful to what you call my illusion. I simply assume a state, knowing I have found it, it is scattered in the nations of the world, and finding it in myself as a desirable state, I appropriate it. Walking faithful to my appropriated state, I gradually become it. Disentangling myself from that state, eventually I cease to be it, for that which requires a state of consciousness to embody itself cannot be embodied without such a state of consciousness. When I know that the whole thing depends upon my appropriation of the parts of Israel to bring Jacob to my father, then I will start to do it. And then my talents will run from 5 to 10 and to 20, and finally when I have all these talents, I will be worthy of being a friend. When I have been faithful in a few things, he will make me lord over much. Then he will tell me, I no longer call you servant, I call you friend, for you did what I commanded you. Now having done what I commanded you, you are my friend indeed. We will walk in that association for a while, communing with the deep. Knowing the deep of self is my real being that men call God. I won't see him as another, I will commune with him as though he were another, and he and I will talk across that invisible state, just as though man spoke face to face with a friend. For after this invisible state, when I commune with the deep which is reached to a point of complete satisfaction, the last seal will be broken. He will break the seal and reveal me as his son, and when I see him and look into his face, he will be just like me, and I will be like him. Then you will know the mystery of the Epistle of John. Beloved, what manner of love? Just imagine what love God has bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. And then, although at this moment that I feel it from the deep, I don't quite know what I am like, or what he is like, yet I do know this much, that when I see him, I will know him. And why will I know him? Because I'll be like him. I will look right into the mirror of my own being, and realize it was for the purpose that I, the Father, embodied myself as man, hoping that eventually he would awaken and become a conscious being, moving completely from a passive reflector to a conscious cooperator in my kingdom. So man gradually moves from the passive state to the active state, and the process is the servant, the friend, the son. Now let us go into the silence. So given the theme of this lecture, Give a little activity for anyone who listens, whether you're listening now or you're listening to the playback or you find it on YouTube or whatever. And that is simply to imagine. And because Neville mentioned imagining for another, we're going to make that the task. Click it over to the chat room for a bit, or before I close things down. So, I'm sure you know people. I'm sure you have friends, intimates, people who need things, and sometimes someone doesn't even tell you they need something, but you know they do. So, simply do as Neville has told us to do, and have a conversation with either with them directly or with someone else who is familiar with them, and in that conversation represent them as already having that which they have said they would like or you think that they would like for themselves. So if it's someone who needs a job, they've got a job now. If it's someone who really wants a relationship, now they have a relationship. It's someone who's sick, now they're totally well. If someone who needs a specific thing, like housing or a car or some certain amount of money, they've got it now. It's pretty easy. And I would say, as a little test, because I know some people are, you've got methods you like, right? But in this case, let's expand our talents. Let's give ourselves the challenge of making it primarily visual with hearing. So if you're going to talk to the friend directly, you're going to see their face. And it could be a video call. You can certainly, in our distance times, visualize that you're having a video chat with them. And even if there's someone that you don't typically video chat with, do it anyway. And include, obviously, the sound of your voice and their voice. And if you want to add some other tones to it, you can. And if you want to do some additional supplemental things for them, like scripting or having change, you should be in general shifting your thoughts about them. Like after you've done this scene, whenever you think about them, you should at least be reminding yourself of the scene. And like if it's someone who needs a job, you imagine they've already have a job and they love it and it's the amount of money they want to make, blah, blah, blah. And then they call you the next day to bitch about the interview. You just essentially ignore that. You can still talk with them normally, but as soon as that conversation's done, you just say, yeah, that doesn't matter. They've already got the job. Or you can revise what they said, like they told you on the phone they already got the job. Either way, you remain faithful to the state that they already have this new job. So don't be swayed by anything in the exterior world. But like I said, let's go with doing a scene of talking to the person or talking to someone else about the person. It has primarily a visual, but also the auditory aspect of it. So that's the simple assignment. Should you dare to accept it and prove yourself a faithful servant, and maybe already at the friend level, let's see. But either way, let's do a scene for it instead of whatever. You can do those other methods too, but let's go with a scene. So my friend Naomi, who I know sometimes watches these, today she posted to us a simple sentence, a phrase that she has found helpful recently, and I think it's a pretty good one, which is, I release you from this state. So when someone's in a really unpleasant state, they want, or it's just not where they want to be, you can simply think that about them and really truly intend that they're now released from that and that they're free to embody something better if you don't want to pick anything for them. But let's say you have someone who is really depressed or ill, or they're just not in a good spot. You just simply think about them by, just close your eyes and bring to mind their face, that unique feeling you get from a certain person, and say, I release you from this state, and let that sort of go. So that could be a second little activity there. But the other thing that Naomi brought up, which was something I had been thinking about, is that people can get so obsessed with healing. And there's all this self-help stuff that's about healing yourself. And it's like that stuff can be so detrimental. It's like, let's now get ready to do a lifetime of healing. 30, 40 years of healing, and we're still not at our destination. There can be like definitely like a procrastinating effect to a lot of self-help. And I think a lot of it is really just that people are asleep. They're only interested in those things. And people are even only writing those books because they don't want to be in those states anymore, and they think this is the way to get out of it. And the people writing the books think that this is the way to help people out of it. But, of course, that just keeps the person in the state of healing perpetually, for the most part, unless it includes Neville-inspired teachings like, having desired ends, having a vision of yourself as one who is healed, as one who doesn't worry about whatever this thing is anymore, as one who doesn't suffer from it anymore, and staying true to that and claiming that. Because if you do that, you don't need to worry about all the fucking healing. Like, there might be some sort of unfolding that includes those things. It might include some sort of therapy, but you only experience that because you claim the state that you desire, that state of being totally healed. But yeah, anyway, that's my last little rant of the day. On Saturday, I will be doing an earlier stream. I'll be doing 6 o'clock. Probably doing another lecture. I might be playing a little bit of a game. We'll see. And I might start a little bit later than 6 because basically I'm going to start whenever Campbell's stream ends. So on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Eastern is when he streams. But so they should be done like way before me. But if they're not, like if they do something really long, then I'll start whenever they end. But it should be like an hour and a half. So there'll be like an hour gap between their thing and my thing. But yeah, 6 p.m. Central Standard on Saturday is my next stream. And then we've got Neville's birthday coming up on the 19th. So I've decided for that day I'll just add an extra stream. I'll just do another lecture on that day to complement that day. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of it. As always, you can let me know either in chat or in one of the comments in the videos, or you can email imaginationstream@gmail.com, or tell me personally if you're someone I know what unfolding or manifestation you had from trying these exercises today. So again, we're going to pick a friend and see them as already having that which they desire to have. All right, thanks very much. See you next time.
In that one assumed would have advanced and no more. But Christ, to save all, did not make this man or that man his habitation, but dwelt in us. That same creative word that created the universe and sustains it dwells in us. Therefore with God all things are possible, and therefore with man all things are possible. So he states it in one book, Matthew, with God all things are possible. But in Mark he states it, all things are possible to him, meaning man, who believes. Can man believe? So this creative word is in us. Well, what is this creative word? It's your own wonderful human imagination. That's Christ in man. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is Christ himself, the divine body, Jesus. We are his members. So when you say I am, that's he. Now can you believe that you are now the man that you would like to be, though at the moment of your assumption, reason denies it, and your senses deny it? Only just started. The
of your life. Can you really conceive a scene which, if true, would imply the fulfillment of your dream? Just imagine it. Certainly you can imagine it. But the problem is, will you believe it? Will you believe in the reality of the thing imagined? If I can this very moment imagine myself into a state, any state at all, and dwell in it. Well, now what is dwelling in it? Well, I am dwelling in it. Well, that's Christ. And that is the resurrecting power of the universe. So if I remain in a state, I will resurrect it and objectify it in my world. But I have to select it and enter the state. If the spectator could enter into any of these states in his imagination, approaching the state on the fiery chariot of his contemplative thought, what would it be like if it were true? How would I feel if I were now the man that I would like to be? How would I know that I could become it? Well, I first, as I assume that I am it, let me think of my friends, those who really would rejoice with me were it true. Let me imagine that I am seeing them in my mind's eye. How do they see me? If what I am assuming is true, they should see me as I am seeing myself. And if they are friends, they should rejoice with me. So let me now assume that I am seeing, reflected on the face of a friend, that which, if I saw it, would imply he sees in me that which I have assumed that I am. Will that work? Try it. I tell you from my own personal experience it works. As we are told in Corinthians, do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you fail to meet the test. Now we are challenged. He said, come test yourself and see. Well, this is how I test myself. If Christ is in me, and all things are possible to Christ, then I must find out who he is. Well, I have found him as my own wonderful human imagination. And because he dwells not only in me, he dwells in us, everything is possible to everyone in the world. And so you help man best by telling him who Christ is. You could give him all the things of the world that he needs. He'll come back for more tomorrow unless he knows who Christ is. You can give the entire world to anyone in this. They'll spend it, waste it, if they don't know who they are. But tell him who he is, and he doesn't need anything more than the knowledge of who he is and the application of that knowledge. For we are the operant power. It doesn't work itself. I can tell you that your imagination is Christ, and maybe you'll believe me. But unless you actually take it to the point of working upon it and operating it, it means nothing. Well, if this night I really believe it, I would not allow the sun to go down in my sleep unless I feel myself right into the situation of the wish fulfilled. It need not a wish for myself. It could be a wish for a friend, for everyone in my world, because Christ dwells in all, and Christ is the true identity of every man. Then everyone must be myself pushed out. It can't be another if God is one. Therefore I tell myself, as the seeming other, what I would do were I you. And instead of giving him the thing that he needs physically, tell him how to get it for himself. What would you feel like if now you were the man that you want to be? How would you see the world if things were as you desired them to be? Now this is what I mean by living in the end. Robert Frost, just the year before he departed this spell, he wrote this story for Life magazine. And he said the founding fathers did not believe in the future. What a shock that they did not believe in the future. They believed it in. He said we are always imagining ahead of our evidence. And the most creative thing in man is to believe a thing in. They had no evidence to support their claim to democracy. They were under a king when they threw the king away and began to simply build a concept of the future. They did not believe that the mere passage of time would bring them that dream. They believed it in. And these men believed implicitly in the Word of God. And they believed that if I know what I want, when I pray, believe that I have received it, and I will. Well, if that precept is true, literally true, to be accepted literally and fulfilled literally, well then what am I doing not believing? I should actually know exactly what I would like to be, and discovering what I would like to be as against what I seem to be, dare to assume that I am it. And my assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. That I know from my own experience. And I know it's a law. Therefore, if someone is not becoming the man that they would like to be, and they tell me, but I once imagined it and it didn't work, then what are you doing now and still not imagining it? If imagining creates reality, what are you imagining? For if Christ is the only creative power in the universe, and I identify him with my own imagination, well then my imagination is creating reality. So what am I imagining? Pick up the morning's paper, and I'm fed with everything I should not feast upon. All the horrors of the world, all the negative states of the world. After having read it for an hour, then I must either regurgitate or in some strange way rub it out, because I can't go along through life feeding upon such nonsense. But if I really know what I want, what you want, what we want, and persuade myself that we have it, if my premise is sound, that imagining creates reality, I should, in the not distant future, hear you tell me that it's worked for you, and the other one tells me, and I in turn tell you, and go through life sharing this marvelous news with others. So I say, live as though it were true. Just as though it were true. That passage of Shakespeare, we have been taught from the primal state that he which is was wished until he were. Here we find it in Caesar. He which is was wished until he were. He wasn't born Caesar, the king. But here was an ambition fulfilled because he was wished into it. He desired it, lived in the state, and everything reshuffled itself to conform to that state to which he was faithful. I see it in my immediate circle. Those who you would not think for one moment would ever become prominent, but they desired to be prominent. Those who desired to be successful, as they conceive success. No two see success in the same manner. Some see it through the eyes of wealth, others through rising in some profession, others in some other manner. But whatever they conceive it to be, they can realize it. If night after night they sleep in the assumption that they are now what they would like to be. And so we go back that if the Word is truly the Word that creates the system in which we live. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By him all things were made, and without him was not anything made that was made. No, not even the so-called unlovely things. For if all things were made, he has to be responsible for the unlovely things as well. So we are told in Scripture, I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. I create the blessing, I create the curses. But now I must choose life. Choose the lovely things, but don't say there's another creator. For if there's another creator, then we are in conflict. So my own imagination can conjure unlovely things if I dwell upon them, or the lovely things. But they can't be two gods. There can't be two creators. And if I can find that creator and identify him with my own wonderful human imagination, then I can't pass the buck. I can't turn to anything and blame it for the things happening in my life. But I know that many of us are not discriminating, and when we see our own harvest, we don't recognize it. We can't conceive that we, in some strange manner, permitted these things to be entertained by us. But we did. It could not have come to pass in any other way. So if I believe it and accept it, well then I will live by it. And then when I know what I want for anyone, and this goes for everything in this world, whether now, this very moment, you desire happiness in marriage. You say, but there's not one person in my world that's eligible. I know no one. You don't have to know anyone. All you have to do is to decide within yourself what you want. Now, what would you do if it were true? Would you wear a ring on the one finger which would imply that someone placed it there, one that you admire? Well then, wear it there. Don't wear a physical ring. Put it on just as though he had placed it there. And sleep feeling that which you are feeling as real. Don't say it's all imagination. Certainly it is, because all imagination is Christ. Therefore, it's all reality. So when you say, well, that's only my imagination, well, you're just saying, well, that's only a thing called Christ. When you treat imagination that way. Is there anything in this world that wasn't first imagined? Name one thing or point out one thing in this world for me that is now considered to be real that wasn't first only imagined. What is now proved was once only imagined. Therefore, this is a true statement. All things were made by him, and he is your own wonderful human imagination. All objective reality is solely produced through imagining. The clothes you wear, the chairs in which you are seated, this in which we are now placed, everything was once only imagined. Now tonight, find out exactly what you, not what they think you ought to want, what you want. Ask no one's permission. You don't need any man's permission. You don't need your own decision. What do I want? Now what would it be like if it were true? What would I feel like were it true? Now catch the mood and try to give that mood all the sensory vividness of reality, all the tones of reality, and then sleep in it, just as though it were true. And then await the inevitable. The inevitable is you're going to resurrect it and objectify it on the screen of space, and then the world will call it real. And they may not believe you. It doesn't really matter. If you tell them it came to pass because you simply imagined it. Now, they'll point to the series of events that led up to it, and they will give credit to the bridge of incident across which you walked towards the fulfillment of that state. And they'll point out some physical thing that was the cause. No, the cause is invisible, or the cause is God, and God is invisible to mortal eye. Who knows what you're imagining? No one knows. But you can sit down and imagine, and no one can stop you from doing it. But can you give reality to the imagined state? If you do, yes, a bridge of incident will appear in your world. And you'll walk across some series of events leading up to the fulfillment of the imaginal state. But don't give causation to any physical step that you took towards the fulfillment of it. You imagined yourself having a marvelous business. And then comes the day a building is for sale, and you haven't a nickel towards it. And not a total stranger, but a man comes in and asks you quite in a friendly manner, are you going to buy it? And knowing you don't have a penny, you say to him, as you would a friend to a friend, with what? And then he said, well, I have money. It's only in the bank drawing nothing. You say, well, I have no collateral. But he said, I've watched you. You're an honest person. Your family, they're honest. I think they are. Would you like me to buy it for you? I'll get my lawyer to bid for it. If they knew that I'm bidding, that I have money, they'll bid me up. And so I get it at the very lowest price by getting a lawyer who represents more than one client, and they do not know who he represents, and he'll bid for it. Are you willing to take it regardless of the price? And you say yes. I'll take it. But I have no collateral. All I need is your signature, that you will simply pay 6% on whatever the price is, and then reduce that principal over a period of 10 years. Agreed? Yes. But then sign this, and we'll see if we can buy it. That day, you owned the building. And you didn't have one nickel when you owned the building that day. You only had your signature on a piece of paper. At the end of 10 years, you repaid the man his principal. You reduce it every year, paying him 6% on the remaining principal, and reduce the entire thing at the end of 10 years. That man dies 20 years later and leaves you $150,000 in cash, tax-free, and a couple of homes and many personal belongings. In the meanwhile, you continue in that business, and it multiplies and multiplies. And that year was 1922, 1924. This is now 1968. That building, I'm speaking factually. That building in 1924 is now gone. He paid only $50,000 for it. It was repaid and repaid. A bank 3 years ago bought the property, because the building was rotted, bought the property for $840,000 in cash and no capital gain. From $50,000 to $840,000. In the meanwhile, the business has expanded into all the other islands. So so that today you couldn't buy them out for $15 million. All in imagination. And this goes back to the imagination that preceded this man's offer to buy the building. For the young man seeing this building and entertaining a thought that the present owners deceived his father and through deception got him out of a partnership, a junior partnership. And he was moved not to get even, but to prove that he really had something within him and could be a success in spite of their deception. And so, every day he would see on that marquee, not their name, but his own family's name. And he would see it in his mind's eye because you could not take their name and transliterate it and make it spell this man's family's name. But he saw it. And in his mind's eye, he saw that name, which if true would imply the family owned it. He did it every day, twice a day for 2 years. And then came this sudden, out of the nowhere. And the whole thing was made possible, and today they're all over the islands. And they have no partners. They've never taken in one partner, never sold one bit of stock outside of a family ownership. All by imagination. Now I know what I'm talking about because I'm a member of that family. I'm speaking of my own family. This is not hearsay. I know it. My second brother Victor was the one in whose imagination this whole thing began to bloom. And he still works all by imagination. He knows what he wants, and then after having decided in himself that's what I want, and that's good for the business, he then in his mind's eye, he appropriates it. And then let things happen. As told us in Scripture, the vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it will flower. If it be long, then wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late.